island carved by fire and time, where jagged volcanic peaks pierce the clouds, the jungle tells stories.
Hi, it's Katrina. Civilizations never truly disappear. Even when a people fades from history, they leave something behind. It might be stone ruins hidden under forests, broken pottery beneath the soil, or legends passed down in stories. Languages shift, landscapes change, but traces remain. Think about it. When you walk through an old city or explore a ruin, you're not just seeing rocks and dirt. You're looking at the memory of people who lived, worked, and dreamed thousands of years ago. These scars on the earth remind us that nothing is ever completely gone. Cultures may fall, but their shadows survive in myths, in strange artifacts, or in forgotten temples reclaimed by nature. Today, we will follow these shadows across the globe, searching for the marks left behind by ancient civilizations, from jungles overrun with moss and hidden temples, to caves filled with ritual bones, to strange statues that look like aliens. Each clue tells us something about how people lived and what they believed. The past is never silent. It whispers from the ground, from the stones, and from the ruins that still stand. And if we listen closely, those whispers remind us that civilizations never vanish. They wait to be remembered. Jungle of gods and chiefs, on an island carved by fire and time. Sharp volcanic peaks pierce the clouds while thick jungles wrap the land in green. This is Moorea, a Polynesian paradise that hides secrets beneath its mossy floor. The jungle is more than trees. It tells stories of gods, chiefs, and forgotten ancestors. Scattered across the island are stone platforms called Marae, built by the Maui, the first settlers of Moorea. These weren't just places of worship. They were centers of power, where priests guided rituals, chiefs debated laws, and sometimes blood was offered to the war god Oro. The Marae were the beating heart of the island, where politics, religion, and survival came together. Imagine walking barefoot through the jungle, only to stumble upon a giant moss-covered platform where people once prayed for rain or prepared for war. Centuries ago, these sacred sites echoed with chants, drums, and the weight of decisions that shaped the community. Today, they sit silent, half buried under roots and vines, but their presence is undeniable. Each stone whispers that the Maui were here, that they lived, ruled, and dreamed under these same skies. The jungle keeps their memory alive, even as their culture faded into time. Temples beneath the moss, beneath the thick, green blanket of Moorea's jungle, lies one of the strangest legacies of the ancient Pacific. The Marae temples. At first glance, they look like giant Lego sets scattered across the island, stone platforms stacked with a quiet purpose. Locals know them as sacred spaces, the very foundations where their ancestors spoke with gods and ruled over people. Long ago, these temples weren't silent ruins. They were alive with voices, smoke, and ceremony. Priests offered chants while chiefs settled disputes, and the people gathered in fear and awe of the war god Oro. Blood sacrifices, feasts, and decisions that shaped generations all took place on these moss-covered stones. Archaeologists have traced their origins back to around 1350, when the Maui people began moving inland. They abandoned coastal life, tired of storms and the crowded shores, and built their sacred platforms deeper in the valleys. By the 1700s, Moorea was filled with temples, each one a symbol of power and status. Today, you find them hidden under vines, surrounded by silence, but still heavy with history. Every mossy stone is a reminder that this island was once a world of gods and chiefs, where temples rose like anchors of faith and authority. Power, priests, and sacrifice. Life on Moorea revolved around power, priests, and sacrifice. The Marae were not just temples. They were stages where politics and religion blended into one. Chiefs ruled with authority, but their power was tied to the blessings of the gods. Priests stood at the center of this relationship, performing rituals to keep the gods satisfied and the people obedient. Sacrifices were part of the balance, seen as necessary offerings to ensure good harvests, safe seas, and victory in war. Some were symbolic, like food or goods, but others were grim, with blood spilled to honor Oro, the god of war. Imagine the tension of standing on a stone platform, hearing the chants rise as smoke curled into the sky, knowing that your fate rested in forces you couldn't see. Ordinary people lived under this weight, working the land while elites commanded their labor, deciding who was favored and who was forgotten. These ceremonies reinforced hierarchy, keeping chiefs above, priests revered, and the commoners tied to service. Yet within this system, community thrived. Festivals, rituals, and traditions bound the people together, giving meaning to their lives. Power, priests, and sacrifice created a rhythm that kept Moorea alive even as storms and rivalries closed in. Rival factions of Moorea for centuries, the people of Moorea lived in isolation, bound together by their temples and traditions. But like many small worlds, unity didn't last. The island eventually fractured into rival factions, each led by chiefs hungry for dominance. Imagine being trapped on a tropical island with family you can't escape. Except instead of silent grudges, disputes turned into open war. Lineages clashed for control of land, resources, and sacred power, while ordinary villagers were caught in the struggle. These rivalries weren't just about territory. They were about who had the gods on their side. Each chief sought legitimacy through rituals at the Marae, claiming divine favor as proof of their right to rule. Archaeologists believe this constant tension transformed Moorea into a battlefield of politics and faith. Brutal hierarchies formed, with elite rulers squeezing labor and resources from commoners, much like modern workers are exploited by corporations today. Over time, life on Moorea grew harsher. Instead of paradise, it became a place of division, where neighbors turned into enemies and survival meant picking the right side. These rival factions weakened the island, leaving it vulnerable when outsiders finally appeared on the horizon. The stage was set for collapse and European arrival. By the time Europeans reached Moorea, the island was already strained by conflict and rigid hierarchies. Chiefs demanded labor, commoners carried the burden, and rival factions kept the island divided. Then came outsiders with strange clothes, strange ships, and even stranger diseases. Captain Cook's arrival in the 18th century marked the beginning of a transformation that would devastate the Maui people. At first, contact brought curiosity, new tools, stories, and faces from a distant world. But soon, it brought destruction. European diseases swept through the island like wildfire, cutting down entire families who had no defenses against them. Within a century, as much as 80% of the Maui population had vanished. Knowledge, traditions, and songs that had been passed down for generations disappeared with them. The French added insult to injury by reshaping the land itself, introducing invasive plants like monoconia that smothered the marae beneath choking vine. The cultural heart of Moorea, once vibrant with rituals and community, became silent. Sacred fields gave way to crops for foreign markets. A world that had thrived for centuries collapsed under the weight of colonization, leaving only fragments of memory behind. The Maui spirit survived, but their golden age was lost. Pineapples replaced sacred fields once. The valleys of Moorea were alive with chants, rituals, and offerings at the marae. The land itself was sacred, every stone tied to the ancestors, and every field bound to the gods. But colonization transformed those fields into something far less spiritual. Rows upon rows of pineapples. The French introduced commercial farming that swallowed up spaces once reserved for worship. Where priests once prayed to Oro for harvests, farmers now bent their backs, planting fruit for trade. The sacred platforms that connected the Maui people to their gods were overrun by invasive plants, their stones hidden beneath vines and weeds. The jungle, once a protector of tradition, became a graveyard for temples. For the Maui descendants, watching their heritage disappear under rows of cash crops was like losing a piece of their soul. The pineapple became a symbol of how quickly cultures can be replaced. How something foreign can take root and erase what was once holy. It's the same story repeated across the world, where sacred landscapes give way to profit. Yet even in this transformation, echoes of the past remain. Beneath the fruit fields and choking greenery, the old marae still stand, waiting to be remembered. A new generation learns again, even though Moorea's temples lie buried under vines and its sacred fields have been reshaped into pineapple farms, the story of the Maui people isn't finished. A new generation is rising, determined to uncover what was lost. Students like Tai Marzin at Moorea's Agricultural High School are rejecting textbook-only learning. Instead, they turn to community elders, living libraries of tradition who still carry fragments of ancient wisdom. These young people walk the same valleys their ancestors once ruled, not just studying ruins, but trying to breathe life back into them. Their lessons go beyond farming or archaeology. They are about identity, resilience, and reclaiming a culture nearly erased by colonization. It's not an easy task. The marae are choked with invasive plants, and centuries of silence weigh heavy on the stones. Yet, with each cleared vine and each story remembered, the past stirs again. Can these students restore what time, war, and outsiders nearly destroyed? Perhaps not fully. But every ritual revived, every temple protected, and every word of tradition spoken aloud is a victory. The Maui legacy now rests not in ruins, but in the hands of the young determined to keep their ancestors alive. Giants of stone in Sardinia across the sea. Far from Moorea's jungles, another mystery rises from the ground: stone giants of Sardinia. On the island's sun-baked soil, where olive trees twist in the wind and locals nap through the heat of the day, enormous statues have been waiting for nearly 3,000 years. These figures, over 7 feet tall, stand like guardians of another age. They are carved with broad shoulders, stern faces, and an unshakable presence, like warriors frozen in time. Discovered at Monte Prama, Sardinia's most mysterious necropolis, these statues are more than art. They are puzzles. Who built them, and why? Some scholars believe they were bodyguards for kings, others think they were athletes, or even demigods made of stone. Their shields and armor suggest fighters, but the truth is still unknown. Farmers stumbled upon them in 1974, sparking one of Italy's greatest archaeological revelations. Since then, more statues have been uncovered, some shattered, some headless, yet all powerful in their silence. Standing before them, you can feel their weight, not just in stone but in history. These giants remind us that civilizations leave behind questions as much as answers, waiting for us to rediscover what they once meant. Mystery of Monte Prama. Monte Prama in Sardinia is no ordinary burial site. It is a riddle carved in stone. Buried beneath the soil, archaeologists have uncovered dozens of massive statues, broken torsos, heads, and fragments that once stood as proud guardians of the dead. These figures are linked to the Nuragic civilization, a people so mysterious they've nearly vanished from history books. Dating back to around 850 BC, the statues show warriors, archers, and boxers, their shields strapped to their bodies in unusual styles. Were they meant to honor fallen heroes, or perhaps to frighten enemies who dared approach the necropolis? No one knows for certain. The site itself is crowded with over 200 graves, suggesting Monte Prama was more than a cemetery. It was a sanctuary of memory. Yet time has not been kind. Many statues were smashed, their limbs stolen, their heads missing. Some scholars wonder if invading forces destroyed them deliberately to erase the Nuragic people's power. Still, even in fragments, the stone giants command respect. They stand as pieces of a lost story, their silence louder than words. Monte Prama remains one of archaeology's greatest enigmas, an ancient whisper still waiting to be fully heard. Who were the Nuragic people? The mystery of the statues leads to an even bigger question. Who exactly were the Nuragic people? They lived in Sardinia more than 3,000 years ago, but history barely remembers them. Unlike the Greeks or Romans, they left behind no great texts, no famous epics, only stone. Their most striking legacy are the Nuragic towering stone fortresses that still dot the island like ancient watchtowers. More than 6,000 of these strange structures remain, rising from hills and valleys as if they were early Wi-Fi towers connecting a forgotten world. Scholars debate their purpose. Were they fortresses, temples, or homes for chiefs? No one knows for sure. The Nuragic people also carved statues like the Monte Prama giants, but again, their meaning is unclear. Were they heroes, ancestors, or boxers forever frozen in stone? Some believe these works show a society that valued strength, ritual, and memory. Others suggest they were symbols of resistance, proof of identity in a dangerous world. Without written records, the Nuragic remain a ghost civilization, powerful in stone, silent in story. And perhaps that is their legacy, to remind us how much of human history is still hidden, waiting to be uncovered piece by piece. Secrets in the Cave of Blood. Deep in the jungles of Guatemala, archaeologists uncovered a place that feels more like a nightmare than history, the Cave of Blood. Hidden beneath the ruins of Doilas, this chamber revealed hundreds of human bones scattered like remnants of a ritual long forgotten. Skulls, arms, and legs were not laid to rest with care, they were displayed as offerings. The Maya believed that blood fed the gods, especially Chak, the rainbringer. To ensure crops would grow and the people would survive, sacrifices had to be made. Inside the cave, bones were painted with red ochre, surrounded by obsidian blades that once cut through flesh. The air still whispers of fire, chanting, and fear. Even entering the cave today is treacherous. You must crawl through low tunnels, wade through water, and brave its suffocating darkness. The sacrifices likely took place before the monsoon season, a desperate plea for rain in a world where survival depended on the skies. Though thousands of years have passed, the cave still holds its terrible truth that the Maya gave not just offerings, but lives to keep balance with their gods. It is a chilling reminder that faith and survival often walked hand in hand with blood. Maya sacrifices for rain. For the Maya, survival was tied to the sky. If the rains failed, the crops withered and famine followed. To prevent disaster, they turned to Chak, the rain god, offering him the most precious gift they had, human life. The Cave of Blood in Guatemala shows just how far they went. Skulls, limbs, and bones were arranged like sacred tokens, each piece carrying symbolic weight. Bioarchaeologists believe that to the Maya, a single skull or arm was just as powerful as a full body, a fragment carrying the essence of life. These sacrifices often coincided with May rituals in early May, just before the monsoon season, when rains were most desperately needed. Today, modern Maya still observe May 3rd with prayers for rain, though without the gruesome offerings of the past. Back then, however, the stakes were clear. No sacrifice, no rain, no food. It was brutal logic born from desperation. The Maya saw blood as fuel for the cosmos, a way to keep the cycle of life moving. While their cities crumbled and jungles swallowed their temples, this practice shows the extremes people once embraced to survive, and how faith can demand the highest price of all. Alien faces of ancient Serbia. In prehistoric Serbia, long before pyramids or Roman roads, people of the Vinca culture crafted something deeply unsettling. Figurines with alien faces. Discovered near Belgrade, these clay statues date back nearly 9,000 years. They have triangular heads, giant almond-shaped eyes, and no clear mouths or noses. Some even wear what look like helmets, while others resemble half-human, half-insect hybrids. Standing before them, you can't help but wonder, were these imaginative works of art or memories of something the Vinca actually saw? Over 2,000 of these figurines have been uncovered, many found alongside terracotta masks and pottery. Some archaeologists argue they represent gods, fertility symbols, or spiritual vision. Others suggest hallucinogens may have inspired the bizarre designs. But here's the strange part. Similarly and like, images appear in ancient cultures across Mesopotamia, the Americas, and Greece. Could so many distant civilizations all have invented the same eerie faces by coincidence? Or did they all remember visitors from the stars? Whatever the truth, the Vinca figurines remain one of archaeology's greatest enigmas. Their wide, staring eyes look across millennia, silently asking questions we still cannot answer. Were they God's art or something out of this world? The mystery endures. Vinca figurines and questions. The Vinca figurines raise more questions than answers. These tiny clay statues, shaped nearly 9,000 years ago, seem to defy explanation. Some have strange triangular heads, others insect-like features, and many with oversized almond eyes that look eerily familiar to modern depictions of aliens. Were they sacred idols, symbols of gods worshipped by the Vinca? Or were they artistic expressions born from imagination and ritual? Archaeologists have found them buried with terracotta masks, decorated pottery, and even early forms of linear markings that some believe could be writing, predating both Egypt and Mesopotamia. That alone suggests the Vinca were far more advanced than once thought. But their sudden leap in farming, pottery, and cultural development raises eyebrows. Did they innovate on their own, or was there some outside influence we can't explain? Some researchers wonder if hallucinogens inspired their art, while others point to a shared global memory of otherworldly beings. The figurines connect to myths across continents, where gods and strange visitors shaped early human belief. Perhaps they were just symbols of protection, fertility, or storytelling. Or maybe they were modeled after real encounters. The truth remains locked in clay, daring us to keep asking. Sanctuary of Odysseus found on the rocky island of Ithaca, a discovery has blurred the line between myth and history. The possible sanctuary of Odysseus. For centuries, Homer's Odyssey told of a king who survived the Trojan War, wandered the seas, and returned home against impossible odds. But was Odysseus ever real? Archaeologists believe they may finally have proof. At a site called Agios Athanasios, ruins of a grand Mycenaean complex have been uncovered, complete with stone staircases, terraces, and fragments dating back to the 13th century BC. Among the finds are roof tiles inscribed with the name Odysseus, and even a bronze bust of the hero, echoing his likeness on ancient Ithacan coins. For decades, scholars debated whether the epic was pure legend, a story crafted to inspire. Yet here, carved into stone and preserved in earth, are hints that Odysseus truly walked these halls. The ruins suggest a powerful settlement, fit for a king who commanded ships and warriors. Though still under study, the site has already shifted the conversation. Odysseus may no longer be just a character in a poem. He may be a figure of flesh and blood whose sanctuary still watches over Ithaca's cliffs. Name of a hero in stone. The most striking proof of Odysseus's reality comes not from legend, but from stone. At the sanctuary in northern Ithaca, archaeologists uncovered roof tiles stamped with his very name, Odysseus. To see his name carved into material from the 13th century BC is like opening a time capsule that bridges myth with history. It is no longer just Homer's word, it is evidence preserved in clay and earth. Alongside the inscriptions, a bronze bust of Odysseus was found, its features matching the hero's image on ancient Ithacan coins. These discoveries connect directly to the stories that have been told for nearly 3,000 years. For centuries, scholars argued whether Odysseus was fiction, a symbol of human resilience, or a real man whose deeds inspired epic poetry. Now, the stones themselves whisper an answer. They tell us he was more than a myth. He was remembered, honored, and named by the people of his time. The site at Agios Athanasios becomes more than ruins, it becomes a monument to one of Greece's greatest heroes. The name of Odysseus carved in stone ensures that, even after millennia, his story cannot fade. Myth has become history. Hidden stash of alien relics, whispers of a hidden treasure have haunted archaeology for decades. The rumored alien artifacts of Sir William Pittry. Before his death in 1942, the famed Egyptologist allegedly kept a secret collection in his Jerusalem home. Among the items were said to be miniature mummified beings only 4 feet tall, with elongated skulls and huge eye sockets. Alongside them, Petrie supposedly guarded a golden sphere etched with strange symbols and a mechanical device of gold tubing and orbs, like something out of science fiction. After his death, the collection reportedly vanished, quietly absorbed by the Rockefeller Archaeological Museum, where it was never displayed. Officially, no such artifacts exist. Unofficially, the rumors have only grown. Some believe the objects are proof that ancient Egyptians interacted with beings not of this earth, their myths and powers shaped by visitors from the stars. Supporters point to the Toli Papyrus, a disputed document describing fiery discs flying over Egypt during Pharaoh Thutmose II's reign. Could Petrie's hidden collection have been the missing piece to confirm such stories? Skeptics call it fantasy, but believers argue cover-ups always leave no trace. If real, this secret stash could rewrite history, linking humanity with the cosmos. Celtic swords and swastikas in the quiet French town of Crozier-la-Nef, archaeologists uncovered a Celtic necropolis that turned a sleepy countryside into a treasure chest of Iron Age secrets. Beneath the soil lay over 100 graves, though the acidic ground devoured the bodies long ago. What survived were the grave goods: bracelets, brooches, decorated vases, and most striking of all, 2 swords. One was long and practical, made for battle, still showing traces of the warrior's fabric that once wrapped it. The other was short, ornate, and glittering with gemstones, a ceremonial blade designed not to fight, but to impress. Its sheath bore twin swastikas, ancient symbols of protection and good fortune, long before the symbol was ever twisted by modern history. Together, these swords tell of a society where power and prestige were displayed in burial, even as Rome trembled before Celtic raids. Around 387 BC, Celtic warriors stormed Rome itself, leaving scars on the Republic. Could one of these blades have belonged to such a raider? The necropolis suggests that the Celts valued both strength and status, arming their dead with tools for eternity. In their swords, we glimpse a culture both fierce and refined, echoing through time. The giant Roman shoe near Hadrian's Wall in northern England, archaeologists stumbled upon a discovery both ordinary and extraordinary: a Roman shoe. But this wasn't just any sandal from the empire's edge. Pulled from the muddy soil at Magna Fort, the leather shoe measured 12.6 inches long, the equivalent of a modern size 14. Nearly 2,000 years old, it was stitched from layered leather and reinforced with hobnails built for strength and wear. Yet its size is what astonished researchers. While the average Roman soldier stood around 5 or 6,